Scientists for the first time have held individual atoms and have done experiments with them. So this is a recent news and I'm quoting from physics.org. So according to, as you can see from the image, they have held and even photographed two atoms in place and have done a variety of scientific experiments with them. So this was done in the University of Otago, and a lot of equipment was used for this for to achieve this feat, including lasers, mirrors, a vacuum chamber, and microscopes. Also, this experiment has shown a peculiar observation that it takes a little bit longer to for two atoms to come together and form a bond, and this phenomenon is not currently explainable by the current scientific understanding. Why does it take that much time to form a bond? So I'm quoting here: our method involves the individual trapping and cooling of three atoms to a temperature of about a millionth of a Kelvin using highly focused laser beams in a hyper-evacuated chamber around the size of a toaster. We slowly combine the traps containing the atoms to produce controlled interactions that we measure, says Associate Professor Michael F. Anderson of Otago's Department of Physics. So when the three atoms approach each other to form a molecule and all receive a kick from the energy released in the process. So why is the energy released in the process? Because whenever two atoms come together and form a molecule, the overall energy of the combination of the molecule has to be lower than that of the individual atoms. Then only they will come together in the first place and combine. Now, how do they form molecules? They form bonds, and two atoms come together and they can form two types of bonds. Mainly there are other kinds, but mainly two types, which are covalent bond and ionic bond. And as you can see from this image, this is a molecule of methane, CH4, and as you know that each hydrogen atom has only one electron on its own, but the electron is not in a stable energy state, so it needs two electrons in the first energy state to be stable. So, and also similarly for the for the carbon atom, it needs 8 electrons to be stable, but it has only 4 electrons of its own. So what happens is four hydrogen atoms come together and form a bond with carbon atom, and they share their electrons. So suppose this hydrogen atom comes with his its own electron, and what it does is it shares an electron with the carbon atom. So this is called a covalent bond. So there, if you remove the hydrogen atom, then it will only have one electron, but now it gets an extra electron and it shares it with the carbon atom. So now this whole molecule has a lower energy state. And ionic bond is when an atom loses an electron to another atom, so it becomes positively charged because it lost an electron, and the atom which gained its electron becomes negatively charged. And because opposite charges attract, They attract each other and form a bond called ionic bond. And now back to the article. As you can see, a photo of the equipment being used in the experiment. It looks quite complicated. I have no idea is what is there. Maybe a vacuum chamber, lasers, I guess. So I'm quoting here: two atoms cannot form a molecule. It takes at least three to do the chemistry. Our work is the first time this basic process has been studied in isolation. So what they have done is they were able to see the exact outcome of the individual processes. So what they did is they had three electrons somehow, and that is itself a big feat. And they held and they photographed it from a microscope, and the the equipment which they used to hold the electrons, then they moved those equipment slowly close together, and they did experiments with that situation, and they studied how they are forming molecules and other things. So as you can, it's mentioned in the article, we now know more about how atoms collide and react with one another, and research on being able to build it on a smaller and smaller scale has powered much of the technological development. The experiment findings showed that it took much longer than expected to form a molecule compared with other experiments and theoretical calculations, which currently are insufficient to explain this phenomenon. While the researchers suggest mechanisms which may explain the discrepancy, they highlight a need for further theoretical developments in this area of experimental quantum mechanics. So I guess this is really a promising and interesting piece of news, and I think this is going to lead to much greater discoveries, and it's going to help build some really interesting stuff in the future. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.